Hey guys, how's it going? Value Venture Investing here today. So today we'll be talking about Virgin Galactic, and wow, we have seen this thing just skyrocket. As of Friday, at one point I think it was up over 80%. Closed the day about up 43%. So we're going to be talking about that today. We're going to be talking about what's happening with the stock. We're going to be talking about the earnings call and the earnings that just came out for Q1 2025. And I'm going to give you my thoughts on why I think we're seeing this movement in the stock and what we might see going forward. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to go through the financials really quick. We're going to go through their pictures, their document that they provide, the PDF that they provide, and then we're going to go through the conference call. I'm a little sick right now, so if I sound a little bit strange today, guys, forgive me. But anyway, getting into the stock here again, like I said, we're about $4.80. Hasn't done much lately, but you also got to keep in mind we've seen a huge gain, but over the last 5 years, we're still down 98%. To regain these 2021 highs, we're looking at like over $1,000 a share because, of course, the reverse stock split. But still, what's going on with this huge run that we saw on Friday and what's going to happen going forward. Now, in terms of the earnings here, Q1 2025, we had about $461,000 that came in. Of course, that's down 77% year over year. It was 1.9 million a year ago. Net income was slightly better, loss of $84 million versus $102 million, down 18% year over year. And their cash position dropped a little bit to about $535 million. In terms of the revenue for the last few quarters, it's pretty strong. I mean, that was a positive for sure, excluding Q2 2024. And the net income is being kind of around line there. Cash has dropped off a little bit. Getting a little bit more into detail here. Like I said, $461,000 in revenue. A couple things that I wanted to note in terms of the operating expenses. I spoke about this on my last video. Research and development has dropped off a lot, right? $33.3 million versus $58 million. Keep in mind, this is because they are utilizing this line item now as capital expenditures. So their expenses are actually going to be dropping, and they're going to continue to drop. And we're going to see that show up on here as depreciation and amortization of that property, right? So that's gone up a little bit. So that's something to keep in mind. It's an accounting thing. Their expenses are going to be going down, but that's just definitely something to keep in mind. So their operating loss was $88 million, which was actually a lot better than the year ago before, again, because of what we talked about specifically, right? But definitely makes the income statement look a lot better. One thing I always found a little interesting was interest income was down a lot. I didn't see a huge amount of changes on their statement of cash flow in terms of their investments. So if you guys know anything about that, let me know. So their total comprehensive loss was $84.6 million versus $102.8 million a year ago. And then their net loss per share was $2.38 versus $5.10. Something else very interesting here as well. We saw that they issued more shares again. So we've got the weighted average shares outstanding, basic and diluted. We've got 35.4 million shares outstanding. A year ago, that was 20 million. So we've seen quite a bit of dilution. We're going to see how that came into here. I think they issued about $6 million or 6 million shares rather this quarter. So for the percentage of amount of shares they have, that's quite large. One other thing I wanted to mention is on the balance sheet. When we talk about cash, I don't include their restricted cash. They usually do. So they have about $31.39 million in restricted cash. And of course, the property, plant, and equipment is going to increase because they are taking capital expenditures for these assets they're going to have, which is, of course, their new Delta class aircraft that they're being working on. If you want to know more about that, of course, watch my last video. We kind of get into that a little bit more. Statement of cash flows, really nice to see the stock-based compensation drop. It's almost like they were listening to me a bit. I always said I hate to see this huge amount of stock-based compensation. It was $8.2 million a year ago. It's $4.7 million this quarter, this 3 months quarter, March quarter of 2025. So that's nice to see. Maybe they're listening to me. Like I said, capital expenditures, of course, it increased drastically because, of course, like what I said, these new investments they're making now are capital expenditures, $46 million versus $13 million a year ago. And here is the proceeds of common stock. 30.7, I think they said it was $31 million. So they issued about $31 million worth of stock, only 7.2 million. So again, a lot of dilution by the company. They really don't have a lot of shares outstanding. I hate dilution by a company that's in a position like this. Of course, they're going to have to either tap debt or tap equity. And they don't have like a really high float or anything like that, so it's not necessarily a bad thing to do. Now we're going to go through their little presentation here pretty quick. Like I said in my last video, they seem to be getting less and less. Even this conference call was only like 30 minutes because there's less information, and we're going to get into how they're actually going to be showing this information going forward. But it's more about, it's showtime, right? It's time to show what you guys are actually doing and actually driving into numbers. Nonetheless, they went through basically these 4 portions here. They went through the rocket propulsion system. I like how they've color coded so you can see what they are: avionics and flight controls, mechanical systems, and development and delivery of carbon parts. So quickly go through each one of those. Of course, they talked about excuse me, their hybrid rocket motor system. They're talking about how this has to come out between every flight. So they're talking about how rapidly they can do that. I like here how they have this little picture here too. You can see exactly what part they're talking about in the actual Delta class spaceship. Go to the next slide here. They talked about their avionics and flight controls. Of course, this is a test bench that they have. They make it look really cool. I think it's kind of funny with all the red lights and stuff like that. And they're talking about basically this is how they can test their aircraft before they even get off the ground. Likewise, they have their flight simulator here as well, avionic and flight controls that they can do before they even get off the ground. They give a couple little more photos here of basically their landing gear and a couple other things. So basically they're doing a lot of this lately, showing the kind of equipment. Then they go into carbon. They're saying that these are carbon. So these are the lower wing skins. They showed that how these are produced here. Of course, there's the upper wing skins as well, all carbon. And then the fuselage, which is the main body here as well. I'm pretty sure we saw this during the last quarter as well, that photograph. And then their feather boom, which of course is this kind of like vertical part that comes up the side here, is all carbon as well. So just in case you guys hadn't seen those, the bulkhead as well here, basically at the back of the aircraft. And then just kind of an overview of the assembly and tooling. But going forward, they're gonna have a bi-weekly series. Basically, we're gonna be having videos, and I think that is a lot more impactful than these specific PDFs. Because like, how many people, like, if you're watching this video, you're obviously like educated in Virgin Galactic. You're educated in stocks most likely, and you're a very specific audience, whereas this type of multimedia is maybe not really accessible by many. So they're going to basically be having videos, it sounds like, starting next month, that are going to be more readily available, more easily digestible. Because let's be honest, just like if you're watching my video, most people prefer to watch videos. It's easier to digest, right? So this is going to be something that could definitely potentially hype up the stock a lot more. Because of course, like we saw in 2021, Virgin Galactic was just like a massive hype stock. We saw the stock go through the roof. So is that something that's going to be happening going forward? Yeah, I don't know. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. Again, this is the exact same slide as last quarter, where they're talking about the opportunities for high altitude, long endurance tests, specifically with governmental agencies, right? So they talked a little bit more about it. They said, basically this could be for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance support, command and control node capabilities. So again, there was no specifics on this. So they talk about how they're talking about this a lot, but I mean, they haven't really built this into their business model. If you look at my last, I'm not going to go into it again, but if you look at my last video where we actually go into the financials a bit, how they figure, with one spaceport, they'd be getting about $450 million a year. It doesn't even, take this into account. It's basically talking about future astronaut fees, as far as I'm aware. So, I mean, it's kind of ambiguous right now, right? Unless they give us some more concrete details, right? In terms of the cash flow on the balance sheet, free cash flow for this quarter was negative 122 million. It was right in their guidance for last quarter. Next quarter, they expect between a loss of 105 million and 115 million. And like I said, cash and cash equivalents, they're saying 567 million. Well, I don't include the restricted cash, but if you do, 567 million dollars. So they like to keep at least a decent amount of cash, which is kind of funny for a company that has like a $200 million market cap. Have over $500 million. But of course, that's the name of the game when you're essentially making nothing in terms of revenue, right? Upcoming key milestones. This really hasn't changed, but a good refresher for you guys here. We're in 2025 right now. Summer, fall, winter. They're basically building and testing the Delta spacecraft. In 2026, this hasn't changed. In spring, they're going to do the first glide test flight. Summer, they're going to do the first research space flight, which will generate revenue. And then in fall, they're going to do the first private astronaut flight. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this in detail on what they said on the conference call here as well. So Q1 2026, they expect to open up sales. They weren't specific of what last quarter when they were going to do that again. So it's good to actually get some clarity on that as well. The price is expected to increase beyond 600K. So there must be some sort of demand. They keep talking about increasing this price, that they think that they're going to get that. They talk about in the conference call people wanting to do it more than once, these types of things. So they seem like they should be able to fetch more than 600K per seat. So we'll see going forward where we're at that. It'll be interesting to see. They had brief mention as well of a possible spaceport in Italy. I think they're in the feasibility study of that right now. And in terms of their guidance for next quarter, they're seeing about $400,000 in astronaut access fees. So basically where we're at right now. But a big thing, I think one of the reasons, and we're going to get into this right now, why I think the stock's doing what it's doing. One of the reasons, they're saying by 2026 they expect to be cash flow positive. So I don't recall them ever saying that before, but that's something that they said on the conference call here. Now, in terms of what this stock is doing, and seeing a move like this, there's a couple different possibilities. It's possible we don't have that high of a float, and there's quite a bit. I think it's like a quarter of the shares outstanding or short. We could be seeing a little bit of a short squeeze develop. It's possible for a company that's got hammered like this. But it's a little too early to tell. We'll have to see what happens over the next several trading days. That's a possibility. It's also a possibility that it's coupled with the fact that we're getting closer to actually sales being reopened and then being cash flow positive, and seeing this plan that they have come to fruition. But I'd be leaning more towards just some sort of short squeeze type activity to see this kind of movement for a stock that's been hammered so much. I mean, it was huge. It was up over like 80% at one point during the day. We haven't seen Virgin Galactic move like that since back in the 2021 time. So, I mean, you could see the euphoria go again with this company and it just go wild, just go to skyrocket the moon. So, love to see what happens going forward. Updates in terms of the company about what's actually happening aren't too specific. They're basically saying about the same. Consistency is good, but in terms of price action of the stock, it's super interesting. So I'd love to know what you guys think about this. What do you think? What do you think the reason is for this huge skyrocket in the stock? What do you think the price target is on the stock? Where do you think it's going to go? Or are we going to see another 2021 type scenario? Or are we going to still see it kind of remain flat for a couple years to come? Love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.